This October 11, 2016 is the regular meeting of the Samuel County Board of Supervisors. I will turn it over to our County Counsel so he can report out a closed session.
Thank you, Chair. Board of Supervisors met in closed session. Board of Supervisors met in closed session today to discuss agenda items number 1 through 4 on today's agenda. The board discussed agenda items number 1, 2, and 4. It did not discuss agenda item number 3. That discussion will take place this afternoon after the regular session. In regards to agenda item number 1, the board met and conferred in closed session to confer with its labor negotiators. Those negotiators are Allison Hauk, Ray Espinoza, Joe Paul Gonzalez, Melinda Casillas, Georgia Cochran, and Steve Coffey. The employee organizations involved are the Institutions Association, Law Enforcement Management, Management Employees Group, SEIU Local 521, the General Unit Employees, the Deputy Sheriff's Association, SEIU United Long-Term Care Workers Local 6434, and the unrepresented employees, which include confidential management, and appointed department heads. The authority to meet can be found in California Government Code Section 54957.6. At this time, the board took no reportable action. In regards to agenda item number 2, the board met and conferred with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and the significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Section 54956.9 in one case. This closed session is authorized by Section 54956.9 D2 and E1. At this time, the board took no reportable action. Finally, the board met and conferred in regards to item number 4. This closed session involved public employee discipline / dismissal / release. The authority to meet can be found in Government Code Section 54957. At this time, the board took no reportable action. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, County Counsel. At this time, we'll move on to item C, presentations and recognitions. Prior to the presentation of annual Trinidad Insurance Fund Employee Safety Awards, I do want to take a vote on the remaining proclamations. And there's a proclamation to the Samuel County Historical Society honoring their 60th anniversary. The second is the Samuel County Board of Supervisors will recognize Castellano family as the 2016 recipient of the Youth Alliance Changemaker Award for the outstanding commitment to improving Samuel community. And the third is the Samuel County Board of Supervisors will recognize Javier Renteria as the 2016 recipient of the Youth Alliance Youth Inspiration Award for his outstanding community service work and his exemplary commitment to achieving academic goals. And the final one is the this board will recognize National Philanthropy Day and declare November 15, 2016 as Philanthropy Day in Samuel County.
Do move, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second? Motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So I'll turn it over to our CAO to present, to lead into the presentation of annual Trinidad Insurance Fund Employee Safety Awards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As your board's aware, we are a self-insured county through a JPA known as Trinidad Insurance. We strive to keep our rates down through excellence and keeping our experience down as well through loss prevention and safety. We have Dina Bias here. She works in administration. She has been our key stakeholder for that. She creates meetings, trainings. She does audits. She does a lot of work, so I commend her on all the work and fine jobs she does, as well as the employees within the county for adhering to safety and keeping that priority within our county. So I want to first thank everybody, thank all employees, and I want to hand this over to Dina. Dina?
Good morning. As Ray stated, my name is Dina Bice. In addition to being the executive secretary to the CAO, I am also the safety coordinator for San Benito County. I am pleased to stand before you and recognize some employees that were nominated for the Trinidad Insurance Safety Award. This past year, we improved our safety program by holding more safety meetings and improving the leadership training attendance, which resulted in our county receiving an award from Trinidad for Most Improved County Audit. And I'm very pleased to display this in the administrative office for everyone to see. A prime example of the reason we received that award is because we have many employees that make safety a priority. This year we have 4 people who I'd like to invite to the podium. Vanessa Rosa, Michael Kelly, Margarita Fernandez, and Thomas Aber. Michael Kelly's actually out ill today, but if you 3 could please come to the front here. These folks were nominated by their departments, and on behalf of Trendale Insurance Fund and San Benito County, I would like to congratulate you all on a job well done, and thank you for your outstanding commitment to our safety program. Vanessa Rosa from Child Support Services, you're the winner for the Trendale Safety Awards. You're awarded in plaque. Margarita Fernandez, or I'm sorry, grab the wrong one. Margarita Fernandez from Behavioral Health. You get a certificate of recognition and a pin as well. Thank you so much. Okay, I just misplaced my pen. There it is. Thomas Aber from Health and Human Services. Thank you so much for your commitment to safety. Thank you, Dana. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you all. That's back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Okay, the next 2 proclamations, I'm not sure if the recipients are here. I believe that we do have a representative from the Youth Alliance here. If you'd like to step up to the podium. I know that there is an event this Saturday where these proclamations will be presented. So if you'd like to speak to that event and to these recipients, you're more than welcome to.
Good morning, everybody. Morning. Real quick, annually the Youth Alliance recognizes youth and adults and family members that that make exemplary achievements, that create hope in others, that do things that are just really awesome philanthropy, and are example to the community about why we all live in this community and how we really actually need each other to move on and do what we do in our lives and support our kids. So Youth Alliance is recognizing the 2 people, or actually one is a family and the other one is a youth. I haven't met the family, but I know that they've done a lot for this community and other surrounding communities to make a difference in lives of students and other people. The youth that's receiving the award was a youth that was on probation, and he changed his life around through one of the programs that we have, and he's now on track to graduate. He went for the first time his senior year to a dance that happened over the weekend. Anyway, I can talk a lot, but I'm not. So I put a couple of these invitations if anybody would like to go to our event. It's going to be in San Juan, and then I'm going to leave these here for everybody here on the board. And I just wanted to say thank you for the proclamation, and then also, I just love being in this community. And we're all really lucky.
Okay, so moving on to the first item on there. Is there someone here to accept the proclamation for the San Benito County Historical Society honoring their 60th anniversary? And there is Mr. Pitt. So Supervisor Munzer will be presenting that proclamation.
So this is a proclamation honoring the 60th anniversary of the San Benito County Historical Society. Whereas the San Benito County Historical Society began in the San Benito High School choral room 60 years ago on July 25th, 1956. And whereas the mission of the San Benito County Historical Society is to collect and preserve materials pertaining to the history of the San Benito County, to promote an interest and appreciation of the county past, and providing programs that offer educational opportunity and experiences, to bring together for exchanges of ideas whose interest in history, especially that of San Benito County. Whereas the San Benito County Board of Supervisors historically and continually support the efforts of the San Benito County Historical Society in its missions, programs, events, and activities. Whereas the San Benito County Historical Society continues to provide historical perspective to park and recreation development programs through its membership on the San Benito County Park and Recreation Commission, now therefore be it proclaimed that the San Benito County Board of Supervisors does hereby recognize the 60th anniversary of the San Benito County Historical Society. Thank you, gentlemen.
Delbert Shy. Delbert is the president of the San Benito County Historical Society, and I'm on the board of directors. And we have the distinct honor of representing thousands of volunteers that have worked with the San Benito County Historical Society through the Historical Society to help build, maintain, educate, and preserve the history of San Benito County, both at the San Benito County Historical Park and at the County Museum downtown here next to the library. And so this is really for all those volunteers who have put in so much time and the through the wonderful assistance of the Board of Supervisors throughout the years and San Benito County as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final proclamation doesn't require any presentation. It's will be presented November 15th at the Philanthropy Day in San Benito County. So, moving on to item D, public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any speaker cards?
We do. First speaker is Leonard Pelzer.
Good morning, board members. I'm kind of new at this, so bear with me. I'd like to talk about CSAs in our neighborhood. I'd like to have this put on the agenda for the next meeting. In regards to CSA 47, Oak Creek in Quail Hollow, issues have been presented to the county, uncompleted work and not performed or fixed. These issues have been emailed to the District 4 Supervisor and to the County Clerk's Office. CSAs that still have not been resolved as of April of this year. They are, what is the process at the Clerk's Office to the public? We go down to the Clerk's Office and she says, you gotta talk to this guy. Well, 90% of people in our neighborhood don't even know who this guy is. So what is the protocol? What is the process for this? Street lights, pole number 2486, Quail Hollow Way, not working. That has been complaint since April of this year. He had the county come out, fixed it, because it was running all the time for almost 2 years. And Mr. Jerry was out there to verify that. You had an independent company come out to look at it. Got it going. Only worked for 2 weeks. Still don't work. The neighborhood is dark in that whole area. Evergreens. Going over the sidewalk, which presents people for walking over to the curb and into the street. They did come out and trim the weeds that were coming up through the curb and the street. And I asked the gentleman, how about the rest of the stuff that's going into the street? I was only told to do this particular work. And this is a county easement. The other one is street sweeping. The county has been notified many a times why we haven't had street sweeping for many years. That also went to the District 4 Supervisor, Jerry. Still no response back yet, and this has been going on for quite a long time. The question I have, if we're paying as a group neighborhood $1 million, over $1 million, so why can't we get these few things fixed? And that's also with the entry lights at Quail Oak Creek. The lights were broken. The email came back from your clerk saying, we have to see if there is funds. Never heard another word about getting these fixed. So my question is to the board, what can we do to get this stuff fixed that we're paying almost $1 million a year? That's why I like to have this on the agenda for the next meeting.
And thank you for your comments, sir.
Next speaker is Steve Becerra.
Mr. Chair, can I request that this be agendized because there's many issues going on, one of which is these two CSAs do not have homeowner associations, so we do not have a official contact person to contact with and deal with these issues. So this needs to be agendized.
Yeah, I
as
think
soon as
that
possible.
certainly work with staff to place it on the agenda, whether it's a future agenda or I don't want to make the commitment to our next meeting because I want to be able to meet with staff and have them resolve whatever issues they need to resolve, and when they're prepared to come, then absolutely
Thank you, Mr.
but
Chair.
let's certainly have staff be in touch with the previous speaker.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I know we don't want to get into discussion on this, but in the past, when there have been issues similar to this in my district, what we did, rather than agendize, because it's kind of an isolated thing, is to meet with the department head and staff and the community, and they had the same issue where they didn't have an HOA.
Absolutely.
So I would recommend that first and foremost.
Yeah, that's exactly what we'll do. Yeah, we'll handle it at staff level, and then if it needs to come back, it'll come back.
Okay. I don't dispute that, but I think there is a bigger problem that this board needs to address. So I think it does need to come before us at some point, but there's a bigger issue that this board needs to address. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So moving on, any other speaker cards, madam?
Yes, Steve Becerra.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors, Mr. Chair. Today, I was listening to the staff from Youth Alliance, and it brought about something interesting because my family moved here in 1980. My father was a postmaster till retired. My mom taught school. I've raised 3 children here. Still have a young boy here in this county. And I made the right decision. But today, I'd like to ask you to consider directing your staff to, that would include possibly input from the sheriff and your county health department, to direct staff to bring back a report and consider agendizing a resolution in opposition of Proposition 64. Proposition 64, for clarity, is not about medical marijuana. You and your counterparts in the city are working towards ordinances to allow medical marijuana users to have local access to their medicine they need. But this is not about that. This is about what they call adult use marijuana, about retail marijuana, they call it. It's recreational marijuana. Anyone that's 21 and above can possess up to an ounce. People can open shops here in town. So I just would like you to consider directing your staff to bring this back this month, your next meeting, and consider, after you've received input from staff and input from the public, both pro and con, to consider opposing this proposition. Many other Board of Supervisors throughout the state of California have done so. I won't go into all of the reasons I think this is wrong for our state, and especially wrong for our county, but I will. There's so many things about this proposition they have wrong. They say they have it right, but they have it wrong. Just one. According to the proposition, let's say I'm a convicted felon. I'm a drug dealer. I sold to an undercover agent less than 1 kilogram of cocaine, or maybe less than 1 pound of heroin, or maybe less than 1 pound of methamphetamine. And I was convicted, and I was sent to prison, and I'm a convicted felon. As long as I sold under that kilogram or under that pound of meth or heroin, then I'm going to be allowed to get a state license to sell retail marijuana in this community or any community in California. That's crazy. That's just one thing about this proposition that's incorrect. There's many others. Is it going to make lots of money? I'm sure it is. That's why the people that are for it have raised $40 million to pass this in our state. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope that you would consider bringing this back to your next meeting on the agenda for input.
Thank you for your comments.
I have no other speaker card.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a request that we do bring back a resolution for this county to consider no in 64.
Okay,
There are
so,
others out there that other counties have presented, and if we could put that on the agenda, I would appreciate it.
okay, are other members of the board okay? I know that election is November 8th. We have one more meeting from now until then. If we want to make a symbolic gesture by passing a resolution, encouraging a certain that, that this board supports or opposes a proposition, we can certainly, is there?
I would support that.
Okay.
I definitely support it. I think we should bring something back and be leaders on certain issues as important as 64.
Okay. All right, so we'll agendize that for
We'll agendize that for next meeting.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any other speakers? See none? I will, we'll move on to department head announcements. Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have a few announcements. The first one I'd like to announce to the board is we would like to go ahead and remove item 18 and 24 from our, actually one from our regular agenda and one from our consent agenda, and continue those to a later date. And also, we would like to actually pull item number 11 to be heard in our regular agenda format.
Okay, we'll go ahead and item 11 will be heard at the conclusion. We'll put it after item, it would be item 23.
23, so it'd be the 24th item.
Okay.
Okay. And with that, we have a couple of other announcements. We have our auditor, recorder, elections, Joe Paul Gonzalez, here to give an announcement to your board.
Good morning, Chair, Board of Supervisors. That's Joe Paul Gonzalez, County Clerk, Auditor, and Recorder. Today I have various announcements. We have, as you all know, we have an election coming up, and we have several items that we'd like to bring to your attention. And with me today is Angela Curl, Assistant County Clerk Recorder, to present the items to the board and to the public.
Good morning, board members. We have a news release, a press release that we've prepared. I have copies in the back room or the back table. We also will have these available on our website, and we will be tweeting them out later today. There's several items we'd like to discuss and inform the public about. I'm going to go through them really quick so I don't take much time. We have approximately 26,500 sample ballots and voter information pamphlets that have been dropped at the post office. As of yesterday, I confirmed that they were being delivered today. Additionally, we have over 17,600 vote-by-mail ballots that will be delivered over the next several days. We have a state pamphlet that is 223 pages thick. This is due to the 17 propositions that are appearing on the ballot. This has had a little delay in delivery due to the size and volume of it, and they have assured us from the state level that it will be delivered over the next week. Due to the 17 propositions appearing on the ballot, we are encouraging all voters to pre-read and determine how you're going to vote before you go to the polls on Election Day. If you wait until Election Day and you show up at the polls and you want to read those 17 propositions, it's going to be a really long line on Election Day. So if you use your sample ballot from our guide and pre-mark your ballot, you'll be able to actually get through the lines much quicker. Additionally, this information is available on the state website for the state proposition, so if you'd like to get a preview of it, you can go on the state website. In the primary, we had our top two primary election, which we all saw 34 candidates running for U.S. Senate. So what that means in this election is, in the general election, we only have 2 candidates that are in the runoff. So for U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, and State Assembly, the top 2 vote getters will appear on the ballot regardless of their political party. Early voting started yesterday. We had a voter right at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was great. The encouragement was wonderful. We had people in and out all day. It was a wonderful start of the voting cycle. Early voting is Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We also have Saturday and Sunday voting, which will happen on November 5th and November 6th. That will be from 9 a.m. to 3. Election day, the polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. Early voting is at our office at the old courthouse, 2nd floor. We're the only department up there. It's pretty easy to find us. Just follow the vote signs. Polling places have changed. We had redistricting due to 2 districts had to go through a redistricting process, so we have several polling place changes. Polling places will appear on the back of your sample ballot, which is being delivered this week. Additionally, you can look up your polling place either on our website or through the Secretary of State's website. The last day to register to vote will be Monday, October 24th. The Secretary of State's office does have online registration or re-registration. You can do it right online. If anybody has questions, they can contact our office. Due to the unusual volume of propositions, we have a 2-card ballot, which means a card A and a card B. When you are a vote-by-mail voter, please, regardless of what you vote for or don't vote for, send both of the cards back. If you choose to just vote for one office, like president, which is already what we had happen yesterday, we had a voter come in and handed us their envelope sealed and said, "Here's my ballot," and then handed us the card B and said, "I didn't use this, you can use it for somebody else." It's like, no, we want to keep it together. We use this slogan, card A plus card B equals a ballot. So, okay, so please return them. It does not invalidate your ballot if you do not. It's just an audit that we try to maintain, so it does not invalidate your ballot if you do not. Vote-by-mail ballots also can be returned through Election Day. You can mail your vote-by-mail ballots on November 8th. As long as it's postmarked and received within 3 working days, your ballot will still be counted. We count not only the very first ballot, but we count the very last ballot received. Every single vote counts. Besides that, you can follow us on Twitter at SBC Vote. We do little announcements periodically, so if you want more information, please start to follow us on Twitter. Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. If we include cards A and B in there, will that vote by mail require 2 stamps or 1? Do you know?
It actually does require 2 stamps. So we do have a notice in our flyer that does state it does need to have 2 first-class stamps on it.
I will be asked that question.
Yes,
so
and we have a flyer that we actually put in the packet for that because we had so many questions last time.
Okay, very
So
good.
thank you. That's a great question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, Angela, always ask this question every election year. Will the post office denied a ballot for lack of postage?
No, a post office will not deny a ballot due to lack of postage.
Thank you.
I know what you're thinking. You're a cheap post office out of a stamp.
Strategy, baby.
We will move on. Any other announcements?
Actually, Joe Paul has a few more announcements.
Yeah, so you just heard from elections announcements. Now we have actually auditor announcements and auditor and treasurer. Yesterday, the county successfully converted over from Bank of America over to Wells Fargo Bank. And I know that that's kind of a
like this, Joe.
There's good things and bad things there, right? But we were successful, and we're still in the process. However, all the county accounts have been shifted over, but the only thing that remains is the schools, the county schools, which is about half the county's treasuries. We have, as you know, the schools' checks are actually processed and written in Santa Clara County using the county's bank account. So they're still on B of A. So we're not completely converted yet until that happens, because the schools are the county. We're really one and the same. And I will keep the board informed as we make progress in with that regard. Actually, one good thing I'd like to report is that we came back from a successful New World Conference last week. Started on the 2nd, ended on the 4th. 2nd was a Sunday, so we were there on Sunday. It was kind of unusual that conference, those types of conferences are start on the weekend. We went to attended a lot of HR payroll sessions and FM sessions, financial management sessions. Learned a lot of things. One of the things that we discovered was that the Tyler Technologies actually took over New World Systems last year. Last October, they bought out New World, and so we were thinking, wow, this is not good. We've converted over to New World Systems, and now they are owned by someone else. But we were assured, CAO Espinoza was there. We had an executive meeting with Tyler Technologies, and they assured us that they're not only going to, express that they are really going to support the New World system, but they're going to continue to invest in it, and that they brought on a lot of new customers to Tyler Technologies, so they're very pleased with the product, and they're going to support New World Systems software, which is a very important thing for us, because we've spent the last 2 years in that whole conversion process, which was a very difficult endeavor that we accomplished. As part of the HR Design Challenge that was presented this conference, in the eSuite module, there will be, in a future update, the ability for all employees to actually get on the website and change their W-4 designations, those deductions. And the annual government compensation report, which is all counties have to, and agencies have to submit to the State Controller's Office. There was a little quirk in it last year, but this year it's actually going to be fixed. So we'll be able to report that with a minimal effort on behalf of the Auditor's Office. One other announcement is actually happening today, and that is as part of our implementation of the e-timesheets. Currently, the county does hard copy timesheets. Well, as of today, the administrative office, the auditor's office, the clerk recorder elections office will be entering their timesheets electronically. So we were kind of the pilot departments to do that. So that'll happen today, well, next couple of days. As part of the bank conversion, one of the advantages that we got was that in B of A's process, it actually required us to complete the payroll processing no later than Wednesday. With Wells Fargo banks, because of their processes, they allow us to actually complete our processing until actually Thursday, so that we can actually transmit a file on Thursday, and by Friday morning, all employee direct deposit ACH payments are hit their respective accounts. So that's it as far as announcements from the Clerk, Auditor, Recorder, Elections Department.
Any
Thank you.
questions for?
Thank you, Joe Paul.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
Yes, there's one more announcement out of our administration. I have Louis Valdez. He's going to give a brief announcement from the administrative office.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. A few things. Dr. Kathleen Rose is here. She'll be presenting to the board in just a couple of minutes, so I'll make my comments brief. I do want to advise the board that Library Systems and Services was on site last week. They met with several community stakeholders, including, of course, our library director, Nora Conte, but I do want to thank all the people who took the time. Supervisor Barrios and De La Cruz came and visited with those folks, as well as Superintendent John Perales, Mayor Ignacio Velasquez, Mr. Marty Richmond was also here, and many members of the Friends of the Library. So they'll have a report back to us in a couple of weeks when they return. Second thing, Gladwell and Associates, the records retention schedule folks that we contracted with will be on site next week. They'll start meeting with the departments to begin compiling those records retention schedules that we hope to have presented to you by the end of the year for your consideration and approval. Those are the only two reports I have at this point. We do have some discussion, some additional information with regards to Parks and Rec, but we'll talk about that during the agenda item when it comes up. Okay?
Thank you, Louis.
Those are all the announcements, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Moving on to board announcements. Madam Supervisor, Margie Barrios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Supervisor Rivas and I met with our clerk of the board, and oh, sorry, I thought it was on. The light's on. Okay, very good. I just wasn't close enough. So yeah, Supervisor Rivas and I met. We were asked to prepare a resolution and bring that back to the Board of Supervisors. We're working on that, and we do plan to move forward with a town hall meeting to get input from the community. So just wanted to make sure the board knows we're moving forward on that. I attended the county fair. It was excellent. It was huge. I didn't go last year, and if I did, it was in the morning. Well, I went in the afternoon, and it was packed. The historical park, thank you to them, because they opened it up for all the additional cars and parking that we needed. So that was a real positive thing, that people had a place to go. They bused us to the fair. So very successful. I want to thank everybody involved. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor De La Cruz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to report that Supervisor Munzer and myself had a Vets Commission meeting last Monday, and the issue of discussion was money, money, money. Somehow Vets Park is beginning to be in need of repairs, and some of the clubs, specifically the Babe Ruth, came to the Vets Commission asking us for assistance and asking how we can work together to address some of their maintenance that they're facing today, including the water issues that they're having. More information will come to the board as we have these discussions with some of these groups out there at the Vets Park. I also attended yesterday's city council meeting, and the topic of discussion was actually the fire department. And the way I read the discussion yesterday, and I know it's going to be on the agenda today, so I'm going to kind of be real brief on it, is that the city hall is going to rehire. I don't know if it's rehired or bring back. I don't know the correct phrase, but my understanding is they'll have 6 more additional fire personnel on the city hall fire department, and there was actually some discussion of us discontinuing the contract with San Bernardino County and San Juan Bautista. Some of the members discussed that, and I have to actually commend the mayor for City Hall for saying no. The relationship that we have with the county and the fire department in San Juan Bautista it's the best thing for our community. It's about providing the best fire services out in the community. Whenever I'm in an accident, whenever one of our fellow supervisors are out in an accident, we want to make sure that we have the best fire personnel out there. And he believes that the best way to do that is to continue the discussion on the partnership with the county and San Juan Bautista and the city. That just kind of makes perfect sense. And also that the discussion of a fire district was brought up, but very lightly. Other than that, Mr. Chair, I'll just keep it very brief and wait for our item that we're going to discuss on it today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Munzer.
Nothing to report this week.
Supervisor Patello.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple weeks ago, I attended, and our CAO was also there at the RCRC meeting up at Squaw Valley. And what was the significance of that meeting was the discussion on two propositions, Proposition 57 and Proposition 64. Proposition 67 really arises from the continued issue and problems that the state has with the population of prisoners in the judicial system. And, it specifies that, just a little short summary of 57. I absolutely encourage everybody to kind of do their own research on 57 and go from there. But the RCRC board took a no position, and kind of give you a summary of some of the staff report here. Is that 57 specifies hearings to transfer youth to adult court could only be sought for youths that commit certain crimes such as murder, robbery, certain sex offenses, and when they are of age of 15 to 12, and if they're committing a felony of 16 or older. Under the measure, prosecutors could not direct and file charges in adult court. Prosecutors must now seek a judicial guidance before proceeding a youth offender to adult system. So that's what 57 proposes, and the governor is supporting this along with chief probation officers, and in opposition, the sheriffs and district attorneys are naturally, concerned about this. So the RCRC board decided to take a no position on it, and there was quite a discussion, and but that's how it came out, just because of the conflict of the different elected officials in each of our counties and the impacts that it will have. On Proposition 64, that was another lively discussion, and actually went down to a roll call vote. But the issue is that in November, the voters have the opportunity to allow folks that are 21 years and older to possess, share, transport no more than 1 ounce of marijuana for personal consumption and not for sale, allow persons to cultivate no more than 6 marijuana plants indoors on private property for personal consumption and subject for reasonable, which would be subject to reasonable local regulation, and provides local governments the option and ability to regulate, control, permit, and license, and tax these activities surrounding the use and cultivation and sale of marijuana, or including the ability to ban commercial marijuana activities. Of course, proponents of 64 argue that legalizing and regulating marijuana would minimize the black market activities associated with the product, and by instituting a regulatory scheme, state and local governments would be able to accrue revenue from marijuana activities, and those who are opposed argue that legalization of marijuana is inappropriate social policy. Also, what the state does, marijuana will continue to remain illegal under federal law, and therefore a criminal element in cultivation, distribution, and sale will remain. And with a 13 to 15 vote, the RCRC board voted to not have a position on Proposition 64, with staff maintaining that this is kind of the best case scenario for local control that we could expect through the proposition. And which I voted that we should have taken a position of no on 64, but that was on the losing end. And last, I want to thank my colleagues for their contribution to a basket that was auctioned off for $1,200.
What?
Yes, and they saved it to the very end. This, they were just amazed of the wonderful things that we had in our basket, and I want to thank all the supervisors for their contribution, and it was really something. I'll give you the details later of how that went.
You know, if we divide by 5, that's a pretty good number.
Yeah.
Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I debated about whether to bring this up or not, but I feel I need to. The RMA department received a letter of resignation from our landscaping contractor, Big Red Landscaping. They had the contract for Oak Creek, Quail Hollow, and Riverview Estates. And the reason they put down that they were resigning from the contract was intimidation and harassment from the residents of Oak Creek and Quail Hollow. I reached out to the owner shortly after we received this letter. I asked him to reconsider. I heard back from him last Friday, and I believe we received the letter about a month ago. I heard back from him on Friday. He does not want to continue with the contract. So this has not only affected Quail Hollow and Oak Creek, but it also affecting another CSA. Now I feel like this harassment is now being transferred to our own county employees. And that's why I feel so strongly that this needs to be agendized as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Munzer. The comments that I have is basically just to reiterate what Supervisor Barrios said on Wednesday, October 26th at 6 p.m. here in the board chambers. Supervisor Barrios and myself will be hosting kind of like a roundtable kind of town hall, a discussion on LGBTQ issues in our county. We invite as many people from the public to come and join us so we could brainstorm on how we could improve our county in the area of LGBTQ.
What day did we settle on?
Wednesday, October 26th.
Okay.
So, all right. So moving on to consent agenda. Are there any items that any member of the board wish to pull at this time? Have any questions?
Number 7, which are our minutes.
Our minutes. Okay, number 7. At this time, I'll open up to the public. Are there any items that they wish to pull or consider? Okay, so seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a decision.
Number 11.
11. Pull 11 per.
Wait a minute.
So 11 is
Mr.
going to
Chair.
be.
Oh, you brought it regular.
Yeah, we're going to put on regular.
Okay. Is that the one? Well, hold on. No, I apologize. I'm so sorry. It's actually number 16. Sorry about that.
Okay, so we'll move. We'll pull 16 temporarily. So I will accept a motion for all items on consent with the exception of 7 and 16.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Coming back to item 7, Supervisor Barrios.
It's actually kind of funny.
Mr. Chair, we moved 18. We stricken 18 from the agenda to move to another agenda.
Right. Yeah.
On the minutes of September 27th,
Okay.
we promoted our mayor to major, and just want to make that change. It's in there twice. He's Major Ignacio Velasco.
It was a major change.
That's a major change.
We'll make note of that.
You are good. That would be on board announcements, paragraph 2 and 6. So
Awesome.
simple.
Okay.
That was it.
So noted. Thank
I'd
you.
like to open up to the public for comment. See none, I'll bring it back to the board for decision.
Move to approve with that change. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Second,
Motion
Mr. Chair.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll bring it back to item 16, Supervisor Dela Cruz.
Yes. Do we have to hire this person? Because it's going to cost us money. and we're talking $6,312 of retirement costs.
Right, I'm going to address their recruit, they can perhaps,
That's
in
my biggest
general
point right there.
terms, address how the recruitment.
Right now, the way it stands at juvenile hall, we have one full-time vacant position, and we also have another employee who has been out on extended leave. We are having significant issues controlling our overtime costs. This person has been vetted and is very qualified to assume this position. We know it's more of a cost to the county, but we believe that it would be in the best interest. We want the right people. We want this person to do what he's qualified to do within the juvenile hall, working with our kids.
So sometimes we kind of think about, fulfilling the budget versus, and just getting. Why can't you just hire somebody who's not temporary, just bring them on board?
Well, we are in that process, and this person would actually be a candidate for that as well. But at this point, we haven't started. We just started the recruitment for the full-time position. He fits the bill for the extra help position, and he probably would be qualified. He would be qualified for the other one. Not saying that he would gain that position, but he definitely would be qualified for it. So, again, I think it'd be very beneficial. We are in desperate need of more staff right now. We're coming up to limitations on our extra help staff time already on a number of them, and we are in need.
Let me see if I can add a little bit to that. What is difficult sometimes is to find those people who are willing to take the extra help assignment, generally hoping that that will help them gain a full-time assignment, so it's more of a stair step. But also those folks are, number one, willing, number two, can pass these strict background checks that need to be done. And in this case, you have someone who already has some experience from another county, which, while you can't quantify those costs, certainly there's less involved in the training. Doesn't mean they don't need anything, but I think there's less money involved. The money that was quoted to you there is the maximum. That's if this person worked all the time, which is not what's expected, but we wanted the board to know exactly, the upper limits. So in a perfect world, if we had 15 candidates and they were all equal and one of them was not a CalPERS member, it'd be a lot easier to go with that. In this case, we're pretty limited.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Mr. Bias.
Georgia, these costs have really already been budgeted. They even though it's coming out of the general fund, the money has been accounted for through our budget process.
Through the line item for temporary staff, yes, the department is still held to whatever is in their budget.
Okay.
So they have to manage that. They're not asking for additional money. This is a waiver of the personnel.
Just want to make that clear, that is already within their approved budget.
So I don't know that they anticipated this particular person and this particular cost, but they are still held to that line item
the dollar
total.
amount.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I guess, Mr. Chair, I guess my biggest piece here is that we have a policy that we don't provide benefits to temporary, and we're asking us to waive that rule. That's my biggest piece, because everything seems to be, there's always an exception to the exception to the exception, and so why create rules then? That's just my concern, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other questions, members of the board? At this time, I'll open up to members of the public. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for decision.
I will make a motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No.
Motion carries 3-2. Okay, so moving on to the regular agenda, or to our first public hearing. This is through, out of the Resource Management Agency. Mr. Barnes?
Mr. Chairman, good morning. You may recognize this item. It was before you 2 weeks ago in virtually identical form. And at that time, your board asked that we remove from the ordinance itself the affordable by design provisions. We did that, and in the ordinance that resulted, I failed to notice that the following section related specifically to those affordable by design sections, the affordable by design standards, and so it was not removed. But it didn't make any sense once we removed the affordable by design provisions, so I had to go back and remove that, and that resulted in a need to rehear this item for your approval. My apologies on behalf of that, but here we are. Any questions specifically? Okay.
Any questions from members of the board?
I have Brent, when I read it on the final that there was information on there, but that it would come back if we wanted to revisit it. That wasn't the exact wording, but that's the way I understood it. You're saying something different than that?
No. We did discuss that we could always bring back the affordable by design excuse me, at a future date if that proved to be a need, if the ordinance
Okay, so then I did
working.
read it correctly. Then that is the way
That's correct,
it should
yes.
be understood.
Mhm.
So, okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other questions?
I
Members
guess,
of the board?
Mr. Chair, I know it's somewhere in here. Brent, can you just help me out here to save time? When does this come into effect? 30 days from now?
It would be, there's a first reading, a second reading, and then 30 days.
Okay. Do we have any projects out there that are about to kind of jump this ordinance?
That would be hard to say. I don't think so.
Okay. I just want to make sure that there's not one project, ready to knock on your door, and we can't implement this on that project.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Understood. Yeah, and I will look into that, and we will let the board know if we find something that's imminent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. This time, open up to members of the public. Questions or comments? See none, bring back to the board for decision.
Let me read a title of the ordinance for the record, even though we did it last week. An ordinance of County of San Benito amending Chapter 2103 of Title 21 of the San Benito County Code, Affordable Housing Regulations.
I will make a motion to approve as read.
Second.
This per staff recommendations and the addendum.
Staff recommendation and the title as read.
Okay, there's a motion and a second.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to item 20. This is out of the County Administrative Office.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have taken your direction. Your board requested that we invite Dr. Kathleen Rose from Gavilan College, the president of Gavilan College, to the board meeting and agendize this. So we have Dr. Rose here to give you a brief presentation of introductory remarks as well as kind of what's happening with Gavilan College in our community. So.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I'm an educator, so brief means, at least 30 minutes. So settle back. Kidding, just kidding. Good morning. I'm really appreciative for the opportunity to give you a brief update as to what's going on at Gavilan College. And I have survived my first 100 days as the superintendent president at Gavilan. And I'm not new to Gavilan. I've been there for 7 years as the executive vice president. This is my 34th year in higher education. I'm totally proud to be the new president at Gavilan. And if you've been reading about me and have seen me a little bit out and about, you know that I've been over here in the Hollister area a number of times at several meet and greets, at several community events, speaking at Rotary, and now I'm very happy to be here at the board this morning. You know Gavilan's mission. You know we've been here for a number of years. In fact, we are getting ready to celebrate our centennial in 2 years. And so we're gearing up for several activities to include the city of Hollister in celebrating our 100-year anniversary. So this is the type of question that I've been asking people when I've been out and about. I've been asking, what word describes Gavilan? And boy, have I ever been getting an earful. I've been getting everything from Gavilan College. What about Gavilan College? Haven't been there in a long time. Haven't been to the Gilroy campus. What's going on with the Briggs building? What's going on at Fairview Corners? You have left us, Gavilan College. What's happening in Morgan Hill? I really don't know about Coyote Valley. What about the San Martin Airport? A lot of questions. To Gavilan College, I went there. My father went there. My grandfather went there. My family members have been there. I don't really know what's going on at Gavilan College. And so I've been following that up with what kind of words should describe Gavilan College and what kind of things should we be doing in the future. And I've been gathering that data and research, and from there we are going to move forward and embark in a comprehensive educational master plan, one that the college has not done in over a decade. And we're going to bring in everyone's voices, and I'm hoping some of your voices as well, to look at what master planning should encompass all of the needs of our educational industry partnerships and programming going forward for the next 20 years and beyond. So what are our strengths? We have a lot of strengths. We have 18 programs that are considered ADT, Associate Degrees for Transfer. Those are programs where students come in, they do their first 60 units at Gavilan College, and then they're guaranteed a spot at a CSU as a junior without losing any units in transfer. That's a pretty miraculous thing. We have more and more students who are graduating with an ADT and moving on as a junior at a CSU. Our career technical education programs are exploding at the seams. We just received $700,000 3 months ago to be able to add more programs. We had a hospitality summit last month with area industries to come forward to Gavilan to talk about a hospitality training curriculum that we've never done before. We're thinking about bringing in curriculum in HVAC and agriculture for the first time ever, and other programming based on industry partnerships and based on the voices of our community. Beyond the programs that we've had that have been tried and true for a long time at Gavilan, child development, digital media, cosmetology, and beyond. Our basic skills and our adult education programs are really centered on our work in San Benito County. If you were not aware, we have 7 different locations in and around the Hollister area where we are offering non-credit courses. It's a huge market here. Many of our students involved in our pathway programs at Gavilan start in our non-credit and adult education programs here in San Benito County. And I've been going around and visiting many of those programs to find out what do those students need and why haven't we been talking about those students going forward. What is the community impact? At Gavilan, we have more than 400 employees. We have a big budget. I'm learning a lot about that budget. As the Vice President of Instruction, my role was really very defined. I was in charge of instruction. It was up to me to manage the faculty and the instructional programs of the college. But now as the president, it's a big role. It's a whole new game for me. And now, over the past few months, I've been learning about the scope of that. And I haven't had a lot of blueprint. So I'm going back in and I'm looking at everything that's been left, and I am reanalyzing all the decisions that were made over the last 14 years and bringing in stakeholders to help me understand what we need to do going forward. But here's what we've done. We've conferred more than 1,100 degrees and certificates in 2016, so we're a busy college. We have more students in the fall than we thought we were going to have. We had a large first day of school celebration that hopefully you heard a little bit about. And we've had opportunity to open our doors to students through our GECA program and our non-credit programs, as I was discussing earlier, more so than ever before. We have a consortium, a community-based adult school consortium called Gavilan ACES that involves all of our district areas. And I'm proud to say that 2 weeks ago, we received word that we have been awarded our 3rd federal STEM grant. which will be $1.5 million over the next 5 years in partnership with San Jose State to continue the work we've been doing in science, technology, engineering, and math. Pretty amazing for a college Gavilan size to have that type of award. So over the last 5-year period, here are the areas where we've had the most growth in terms of our majors. And this leads me to talk about public safety training. As you've been hearing a lot about what we're doing in Coyote Valley, we are moving the public safety training South Bay Regional Consortium to Coyote in January. And the public safety training consortium that Gavilan is a part of is a large public safety training collaborative, and it provides testing for most of the public safety training on the Central Coast. And we're very proud to be a part of that. So here's our growth right now. You'll see we had a little bit of a dip. When we started out the fall and I took over as president, we had a significant dip in enrollments, which caused the district to go into what was called stability, which means we have a year to get back up to our base level of enrollments. And I'm very pleased to say that we were able to gain back about 115 of our full-time equivalent students at the beginning of the fall semester that we didn't anticipate. And we did that by doing 2 significant things. We didn't do cancellation of small classes. So in the past, we had a policy, and the previous president was pretty resolved and canceling classes that were under a certain amount, and I chose not to do that. And many students came in and filled in the gaps prior to the beginning of the new semester. And we had students come to us that would have normally dropped out, which was great. And so we're seeing a trend of our enrollments coming back at Gavilan College throughout our district areas, including Hollister. So what's new? If you haven't been on our website recently, you should. It's a whole new website look. And we have a president's newsletter that comes out the first Friday of every month with a highlight on students, highlight on faculty, highlight on departments at the college. We also have a open forum that occurs once a month on the campus, including anyone who wants to come on campus and meet with the president. We had our first one in September. We have our next one on October 26th, I believe. I can check that date and let any of you know who are interested in coming. And it's an open forum with me for any conversations that anyone would like to have about the college. And we're going to have a second round of the coffee and conversations that I had earlier this year, starting again with Hollister, because those were really important conversations. In fact, some of the folks in this room were at my very first coffee and conversation last June. Okay, so a couple more pictures about what's coming up next. We're doing a little bit of upgrade on our main campus. We are doing our swimming pool refurbishment. A lot of people have been upset with the fact that our pool has been closed. The reason why the pool has been closed was that there was a major leak leaking into the hillside. So we had to close the pool. It's a 60-year-old campus, and the pool was cracked and leaking into the hillside, so it's now being refurbished. It will be open again next summer. We are doing several projects with the help of our STEM funding that was carried over from STEM 2 and now into STEM 3. We are expanding our winter intercession courses. We are tripling the size of winter intercession that we'll be holding between the fall and the spring semester, hopefully to attract those students who are home during their college who may be off-site, but also our regular students have told us they need more. We're actually expanding our spring schedule to include Monday through Friday classes, not just Monday through Thursday classes, 9 to 2, which is what, unfortunately, we've been scheduling for a long time. So we're going to be doing accelerated classes and weekend cohort classes as well. And we're looking at more pathway programs, a lot in the CTE area that will be funded through our CTE programs. Our future vision, of course, includes San Benito and looking at Fairview Corners. I have only been in the job my first 100 days, and Fairview Corners has been a top topic, ongoing topic. Every time I go out to Ridgemark for a Rotary meeting or to come to any of the other city meetings, I look at that piece of land over there and wonder what our future will be. And so our board is continually talking with me about that, and we are continually talking about our instructional purposes at Fairview Corners. The educational master plan will go a long way to help us with the development of that property. Coyote Valley, we're in the midst of the move to Coyote Valley. I'll show you some pictures of that in just a minute. You all know that we're at San Martin. We built a small hangar out there. Our program at San Martin, the AMT program, now has double the capacity. And so we are able to serve a number of our students. Many more stations are out there for welding and other community-based programs as well. Coyote Valley, this gives you a little idea of what it looks like now at Coyote Valley. And our programs for public safety will be able to be moved out there, and coursework through the JPA as well as Gavilan coursework will begin in February 2017. STEM Meadow Restoration is happening right now at the Gilroy campus as well as our Arboretum. If you've not been out there and walked our ancient tree pathway, you should certainly do that. Sports field renovations are going to begin as of spring 2017 and will be completed in another year. We're actually going to have some upgraded dugouts and some lighting fixtures out there. And if Ron Hannon, our athletic director, has his way, someday we'll have a stadium that will probably be way beyond the end of my career with Gavilan, but it would be a nice thing for our football players to be able to play at the college, which they've never been able to do. This is a schematic of what the swimming pool retrofit will look like. And then, of course, here's Fairview Corners. These were some of the original drawings that I've just been able to review in my time as the next president at the college. And again, these are drawings that you've been familiar with and conversations that we are continuing to have with our Board of Trustees. Coyote Valley Phase 2, you see the small corner in the lower right-hand side is where we are currently, but we have 55 acres out there, and so we have the opportunity to develop Coyote Valley decades on down the line for a full Gavilan College campus. So what's happening at Gavilan going forward? We are looking at expanding our Gavilan College Foundation. Our foundation has always been a scholarship-based foundation, but we are now looking at redoing our educational foundation to become more of a development-based foundation. And we've already talked with some folks in Hollister about providing some counsel to us about how we could make that happen. Our Measure E Citizens Oversight Committee met last week. The oversight report is available on our website, the most current one, so you can see what's been happening with that group. Our CTE advisory boards are looking at the most current career technical education programs that we hope to bring on board, some of which I mentioned today. Our educational master plan, our board will hopefully approve the contract this evening so that we can begin with a comprehensive educational master plan. And I'd like to come back and tell the board here more about that once we get that work underway. And I'd like to also invite all of you to come out and see our campus. When I've been going around talking to communities about Gavilan lately, and I ask, when was the last time you've been at Gavilan College? How many of you have been there in the last year? And very few hands go up. I realize how unwelcoming we have been at Gavilan to the communities we serve, and how few times we open up our doors and ask you to please come out and visit us. Here in Hollister, Morgan Hill, and certainly in Gilroy, we want to make sure that you know that Gavilan is your college, and I want to make sure and personally welcome you to the campus as well. So we want your support. We want to hear from you. I personally want to hear from you as well. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to have a few minutes to introduce myself to you as the new president of the college and give you a brief update as to what's going on at Gavilan today.
So thank you for that presentation and update, President Rose, and welcome to San Benito. Are there any questions from members of the board? Supervisor Botello.
Yes, Dr. Rose, thank you for taking the time to, come and introduce yourself and some of your plans for Gavilan College. Right, it's a absolutely important service that you provide to our citizens in the county, young and old. And as time goes on, I hope you do come in and refresh what's going on at the college, and the long-range plans provide services to our community. I do have a couple of questions as far as, going back to the Fairview Corners location. There seems to be, in Santa Clara County, a lot of activities, but in San Bernardino County, it seems like our money goes to the north, and we have 7 locations that you stated here giving uncredited classes. What is it going to take to have credited classes, and some development on Fairview Corners, or more of a short term, facility for the district?
I appreciate that question. That is the number one question that I'm asked when I come to Hollister, and it's the number one question I ask when I took on the position of the presidency of the Measure E Citizens Oversight Committee. We purchased the land. I've read all the documents for Measure E. I saw that the original intent was to build a university center at Fairview Corners and then to bring the development of a complete campus to Fairview Corners. It's very clear to me that that was the original intent, but the funding is not there to support a university center. University center concepts are really not done anymore. And I don't know even if they were done then in 2003, or if there were partners then. That was before my time with the college. But what I do know is that by going back now and looking at the educational programs that we offer here and where the density of our population is and where we are serving students and doing the educational master plan project that we're in the midst of now, I'm going to be able to have all the demographic information I need to be able to work with our board to determine what educational programs will best support the apportionment allotment that will support the building of structures at Fairview Corners going forward. And so we're talking with our board subcommittee about how best to bring instructional content first to that property, and then also looking to see what's going on with the housing development in the area and working with Fish and Wildlife on the mitigation reports that we need in order to understand what the timeline will be for doing any building at all on the property. So that's where we are currently.
Okay, thank you. And I certainly hope for your partnership and leadership as we, in the future, move towards a new library facility where it need to be partners with the schools, the city of Hollister, as well as the college, and that's a
Had a lot of conversations about the library, and with Nora as well, who's been a long-term partner with the college.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
Just welcome, Dr. Rose. I really appreciate that you're here today. 8 of my 9 siblings attended Gavilan College, so it's very near and dear to my heart. I'm glad that you understand what the needs are for San Bernardino County, and hopefully with your leadership, you can encourage the board, to pay attention to those needs, that they will be met in the future, and address, what San Bernardino, that education master plan will go a long ways in helping us get to where we need to be.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Supervisor De La Cruz.
So, Dr. Rose, I worked with, Mr. Gonzalez when I was on the Board of Trustees back then. And before that, I was actually a graduate from Gavilan College, and I went on to San Jose State. From a personal perspective, to me, Gavilan College, at that time when I graduated from Gavilan College, provided the best teachers, the best mentors. There were easy access to students, and they actually integrated with a lot of the student activities in life. When I went into San Jose State, and I'm not taking anything away from San Jose State, it's just that the instructors had about 60 to 100 students, and they couldn't do that one-to-one. And so, to me, Gavilan College is very important in San Benito County. And I remember the discussions we had about Measure E. And I remember that some of the discussion was that Gavilan College, the new one, or whatever you want to call it, educational facility, was going to be built on the west side of Hollister, not on Fairview Road. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment.
Okay. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I, too, want to welcome you, Dr. Rose. But I do, I have a lot of concerns about Gavilan College. This board was asked several times to write letters of no confidence for your predecessor and the board. One of your previous former board members that's no longer on your board said exactly what you said. The term you use is the first time I've heard it. University
Center.
Center. It's the first time I've heard that term. He said that would never be built out there because the state wasn't building it. And we kept hearing that's what the Gavilan board wanted to go forward with. There's also the perception that much of our money, as Supervisor Patello alluded to, that was due to San Benito County went elsewhere within the district. And lastly, San Benito County gave up its junior college to become part of the Gavilan district back in the 60s. And there's talk again now of leaving the district and creating our own college again, if that's possible. But the perception out there is that our concerns are falling on deaf ears. And if you want to be a service of San Benito County, then what you're doing today needs to be done much, much more. Listen to what is being said, deal with these perceptions, and show us how Gavilan College is going to service the residents of San Benito County in the future. And if you can do that, you will be doing a huge benefit to San Benito County. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to listen and would appreciate the opportunity to continue to be present and to hear more.
And so, right, just to echo the rest of what my colleagues have said, obviously I'm very appreciative that you're here. Obviously, the more outreach you do in San Benito County and in Hollister will certainly go a long way to repair what's been a fractured relationship between this community and Gavilan College, because, in all honesty, this community really is the foundation for Gavilan College. When you look at people that attend the college, that benefit from the college, or say that the college it benefits from our community. Right. We have a satellite campus here on campus that is useful, but it certainly needs to be improved. And certainly any opportunities we can to expand and to improve these services in our downtown area would be greatly appreciated by us as a board and by all our members and the members of our community and our local residents, and certainly future students that will utilize the facility there in Gilroy and here locally. I know that this was a presentation. Do we have to open up to public comment? Okay, so thank you for your time. At this time, I would like to open it for public comment if there are any comments out there.
Marty Bishop from Hollister. Dr. Rose and I have something in common. We fought our way through upper New York State snow at one time or another, so I can attest to how tough that is, and that makes you grow up really fast. She knows where I stand on this. It's not a secret. I've been yelling from the top rooftops as long as I could do it. And of course, in the modern world, the way it works now is if you're a critic of anything, you must hate it. Of course, I don't hate it. I want it to do better. That's why I'm a critic. So originally, the plan was for Measure E, since you only needed 500 full-time student equivalents, I think it's called, to open up an education center. We were going to open an education center wherever it was going to be. And then one of the reasons we were given that this didn't happen was it went to 1,000. The state said you had to have 1,000 full-time student equivalents or whatever they called it. And my concern is we're going to sit around for 10 years and we'll go to open it up and they'll say it's not 1,000 now, it's 1,500 or 2,000 or who knows because of the cost of capital. So that is my concern. One of the advancements we could do is get rid of that $8 million worth of land if we can get our $8 million back, because that land's not going to educate one single person over the next 10 years. I assure you that. When you look at the cost of even the temporary things they had to put in Coyote Valley. So there's an old saying, and I know you've all heard it, which is the rich get rich and the poor get children, or something like that. But it's the real truth is the rich get rich and the poor get poorer. And I'm all grown up and understand that the trustees put the money in Coyote Valley because they were chasing money. They thought there was going to be a huge development up there, which was promised, and of course that fell through. So now they were in the scramble mode. So they came up with a way to move the JPA for training for the police department. That was never in the original plan at all. So besides violating Prop 39 100 different ways, and nobody's willing to sue them about it, I don't know if that makes them fortunate or us fortunate, because we won't have to pay the lawyers. They need to do the right thing, and the right thing is to provide more education closer to home here, because the more you do it closer to home, as someone who went to community college knows, the more people you get. Yes, you can get in the bus and you can get in your car and you can get there eventually, but it wears you out if you're working for a living. So I encourage us to all move forward together, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Any other comments from the public?
Joe Paul Gonzalez, resident of Hollister. I just wanted to bring up that I was really glad to hear Dr. Rose's comments concerning the student warranty issue that she addressed. That issue in my mind, has been one of the biggest problems with Gavilan College, and that is the announcement of classes. The classes are too small. The classes got canceled, and I've heard it so often. And my own son had to, his coursework was delayed because of critical classes that were canceled, and he wasn't able to complete his coursework within the 2-year program. So he extended it, additional year, and that was that's a big bummer. But once I'm really glad to hear that warranty that the students can now trust the college to stand by the classes that they announce that they're going to teach. That's big, because that will bring more students to rely on the campus to provide the coursework that they need for matriculation to four-year university. So I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, with that, we'll take a 5-minute break, and when we get back, we'll start off with item 23, fire. concluded item 20. We'll move on with item 23, which is out of the County Administrative Office. Mr. Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this particular item came from your board. Your board requested, your ad hoc committee requested this item to be agendized to receive a full report from the board, or actually to look forward or to go forward with the JPA and the consideration of moving forward with the JPA and making sure that your board has consent to move forward with that. So that's really the main reason why we're here today. We have before us a resolution supporting this and different options to move forward. And I was going to pass it back to the ad hoc committee for any further discussion on that.
Members of our ad hoc committee, you guys want to run with this?
Sure. I just wanted this back on our agenda, just for us to talk about, be very transparent with the public, what's going on with fire protection, and the course that we need to take. I think as for the long-term, solution. If we all recall, and if we reviewed our, contract that we have with the city of Hollister, it does specify that the county and the two cities continue to strive for consolidated fire service, either in the form of a JPA or a special fire district. And that's a signed upon agreement that we have with the city of Hollister, and a goal and a policy that I think Samuel County has. In light of some of the staffing issues and budgetary issues that Hollister is going through, I think even though we have a signed contract agreement specifying staffing levels at the fire stations that we share, and and the costs, I think we have to be proactive as far as anticipating, Hollister's desire possibly to have some changes in our obligation within the contract that we just recently signed with them. So, being that it's a take resources and staff time to bring forward options for a fire district or a JPA, we thought that we better cover it with the rest of the board to make sure we're going in a direction that is supported. I don't know what else you want to add, Supervisor Munzer.
Yes, thank you. So, much like the Mobility Partnership Committee, when there was a resolution passed to only support the northern route for the 152, we were going to those committee meetings, talking about other routes. We felt that we needed to have the freedom from this full board to discuss those, and which you granted. With the fire committee meeting, it's kind of the same thing. We feel we need to have the full board on board with the pursuing of either a fire district, and I see in our ITA that and not a JPA. I don't know that we ruled out the JPA, or at least it might be a backup plan to.
Originally, I envisioned this agenda item as a two-part process, where this resolution would support the formation of a district so that we can engage in that discussion with the city of Hollister and the city of San Juan. And if for some reason that the district, a county-wide fire district, doesn't come to pass, or doesn't look like that people are interested, that we would come back and have a further discussion with the board about all respective options. But you could provide the board direction. I mean, we could amend this resolution if you didn't want it to be specifically for a fire district, or you could provide other direction to staff. This is more directed for a fire district at this point.
That's where I feel most comfortable, because I don't think the Fire Protection Committee has done enough research to determine whether at this time, whether a fire district is the best way to go or a JPA.
Okay.
of some sort is the best way to go. So I think we need to have both those options open to us. But basically, just receive this full board blessing to go this route, and also if we have to end up spending money hiring a consultant to study it, that we would be willing to put money forward with the two cities to go down that route. And I believe we just heard this morning that the city of San Juan passed a similar resolution to explore this. So anyway.
All right. Well, thank you for that update and report. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? Supervisor De La Cruz?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the intent, and I'm asking a question to both my fellow supervisors who serve on the committee, is the intent to provide an option in case the current contract that we have with the City of Hollister doesn't pan out in the future? Is that the intent? Or is the intent is to replace that contract that we have with the City of Hollister?
We have a valid contract, and, you know, as it sits today, from what I understand, nobody says it's not a valid contract. We're paying so much per year to the City of Hollister to provide fire protection in the local response area. And as it sits right now, that's in full effect. Nothing has changed. But, you know, we still, it takes time and effort to get to a more permanent solution, and that's what we're trying to move towards.
Yeah, and on that note, I support the idea, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I as well support the idea. I think that these are options that we need to explore. Whether they're viable or not, we don't know. But that's why we've got to do our due diligence to see if this is something that is viable in the future. Obviously, when you have a department there in the City of Hollister, and there's been a lot of concern because of the missing grant or the lost grant funding that's resulting in less full-time some firefighters, it's a concern. It's certainly, there's the threat that this contract will not be, met on the city's side, and that's why we've got to, I appreciate the mayor's comments. It's why we've got to work together, and I think that this is a possible area where we can work together to see if this is something that will not only help the county but help our residents. We all, live in a small community, and certainly we've got to look for options that are going to help our local fire department to meet the needs of this growing community, right? So.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that has been clarified, that we do have a contract with the City of Hollister. We're looking for sustainability is really what we're looking for, and I think this is a great way to approach it. Would we need, and I'll ask this of council, do we need a resolution to explore either the JPA or the fire district so that the wording on this resolution could change to direct us to explore either one of them?
Yeah, we could, the resolution is just memorializes the board's intent. It's not like binding that you have to have a resolution to direct staff to do that. But if you did want to direct staff, I mean, I'm happy to make the changes to the resolution and come back, at the next meeting.
Yeah, I would like to see
or we
that,
could just
Mr.
make
Chair.
changes, or you can direct, adopt resolution and also direct staff to pursue a JPA with the city so that we'd have the resolution adopted and also explore JPA.
Yeah. What I would like to recommend, and because we've done this in the past and it's worked very well for us, is that we have a joint meeting with the two cities and the county and get information on a JPA or a fire district, protection district, and then this way we all get the same information and then we take it back to our respective boards or councils for a decision. Because I really don't know what the pros and cons are for either one of them, and that would be, I would say, a stage for that kind of information.
I could actually change this resolution by adding a sentence at the end where the last before, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of the County of San Benito supports the formation of a countywide fire protection district, comma, or in the alternative at JPA.
Yeah.
And then just a joint powers agreement.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think the essence of this is that what we want to do is get full buy-in from the board to actually do the work the due diligence. We don't want to just be spinning our wheels from a staff perspective, and the board doesn't have, we don't have full board consent. I think once we get to a certain point, I think then it would be good to come back to maybe both the city council, or actually two city councils and the board of supervisors with information that we find out. But I think right now we just want to get consent from the board. We want to put it in a resolution and actually start doing the work.
Sure.
If both cities agree to that.
I was going to say, Mr. Chair, that my experience with GPAs, somehow I would prefer more of a fire district, but I think I have to wait and see what the difference is between the fire district and a GPA. But I want to make sure, and to the public, that the most important thing when we move forward on this are two things, very important, and they both work interrelated, is that cost containment and the public safety are the number one and two things, and they can go interchangeable any given day. That's the most important thing.
Supervisor Munzer?
So maybe this is a moot point now, but I guess I wanted to clarify from Supervisor Barrios that she wanted a 15-member meeting of all three agencies, elected officials, and if she did, I would say we're not at that point yet.
Yeah, and I realize that
Okay,
now after
okay.
our CAO made those
Okay.
comments. So
And again, I didn't want to
No, I
dismiss
support.
what you were requesting, but we're not at that point.
I understand.
Because the Fire Protection Committee, which we have two members of each agency's there, plus staff, we've danced around this, but because we haven't had a full buy-in by all of our boards and councils, we haven't really delved into it, fully to start answering these questions.
And now we'll be doing that if we give direction.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Got it.
Any other questions from members of the board? Comments? I'd like to open up to the public. Comments, questions?
Marty Richard from Hollis. I speak only for myself. I see the city manager is in the audience, and he can speak for the city. I did attend the meeting, though, last night, and I'm sure some of you have gotten a report back. We had a very frank and open discussion on the issue of staffing for the fire department and in support of the contract for the county. I don't think there's any question that they've been directed to bring it back, but I don't think there was any question that the message that was sent, there were 4 members of the 5 there from the city council, the message that was sent was that we're going to honor the contract. And I'm happy about that. We took the contract, and as a person who resides in the city, we took the contract, and we're going to meet our obligations. When we give other people contracts, we expect them to meet their obligations, and we raise hell about it when they don't. So we're in the same situation, and we should be. And we made some mistakes, and there was no punches pulled on that either. We should have had this plan in place 2 years ago because, as I pointed out, only 12% of the applicants won a grant that year. 2,500 grants were less than 300 awards. So we're less than 12% winners. And nobody staffs a major operation with a contract on a 12% chance that you're going to win and an 88% chance that you're going to lose, almost one out of 9 or 1 out of 10 that you're going to lose. So we didn't do that, and that's a mistake. And there was a lot of hopping around and trying to find an interim solution. And I think there was an interim solution. I don't remember all the details, but essentially what it was is to put back 6 of the personnel back on the job. And the chief said he would come back with new numbers on the overtime and so on and so forth. And I thought, because several of us thought that the numbers were too low. And they're going to be higher. And the city appeared to agree. They didn't take a final vote, but they appeared to agree to take money out of their general fund reserve, and that's what it's for when we make a mistake or a natural disaster, which is the same thing at the city, okay? A mistake or a natural disaster. Well, we had a mistake and a natural disaster. I want to say something about your idea about going forward. I'm not afraid to look at anything. that'll work for everybody. I want to point out, though, this is a complicated issue, and it's going to be driven as much by the budget. And I wouldn't say it the way Supervisor Dela Cruz said. I wouldn't say it's either the budget or safety, or we got to look at both or whatever. It's going to be budget driven, and I will wrap up by saying it's going to be budget driven. It's very complex. It's going to need a lot of analysis. You're probably going to have to invest a lot of money to get the answer, and that's why it's good to start early rather than late. Thank you for your time.
Are there any other speaker cards? Okay, anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? See none, I'll bring it back to the board for decision. Or additional comments?
I might just add one more comment. And, we know that these, I guess Hollister made the decision to move forward with maintaining the 6 positions. When this contract expires for us in a couple of years, we're have to figure out how we're proceed. Whether we're develop our own fire department, continue to contract with Hollister, go to a special district, or do a JPA. We should be, just as the speaker just noted, working on that right now. It's not too soon.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
And,
Dela Cruz.
And I also believe that the reserves got to be part of the conversation. I mean, it's just have to. And there were some items that they were discussing last night at the city council meeting, such as the ambulance, the ratios of why 3 people have to go to an accident, whereas ambulance could go in, and the fire chiefs explained it perfectly that even I understood it. So I commend them for actually they got a good guy at the right position, the City Hall Fire Department. But all those discussions, hopefully, I hope, are going to be held if the City Hall does decide to join with San Juan Bautista and the county to start talking about the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments? Motion?
No. I'll make a motion. Where we had changed that wording,
If the board is in favor of that, then I would add it to the end of the now therefore be it resolved, to add the words or in the alternative a joint powers agreement.
I'll make that in form of my
So then the motion-
include that option in the last whereas.
Okay.
Second that.
Be it resolved. So then you could just say adopt a resolution with amendment presented by staff and then the rest of the staff recommendation.
Right.
Okay. The motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll poll the board. We have 3 items left. I've been told that they're relatively quick items. Plus, we have a closed session. That'll be a quick one as well. Do we want to adjourn for lunch, or do you guys want to power through?
Power through.
So do I.
I'm in for powering through.
Go
Yep.
for it.
Supervisor Dela Cruz?
I have a Supervisor Dela Cruz appointment. He usually has the appointment for lunch at noon. I happen to have it this time, so I would vote for, or I could text who I'm having lunch with.
Why don't you send that text message?
Okay, half hour?
Half hour?
Half hour?
About half hour.
Okay.
I support you, Jerry.
Okay, so let's
power through.
move on with 21, County Administrative Office, Mr. Valdez.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you have before you, if you will bear with me, a request from our office to discuss getting direction regarding the possible realignment of boards and commissions in San Benito County. As most of you, I'm sure, have received reports and have heard, there are certain boards and commissions that require more attention than others, and some that are more active than others. A recent example of this particular issue in terms of urgency that was raised with our office was the Parks and Recreation Commission. Parks and Rec has not met for a few months now since the departure of my predecessor, Sarah De Leon. And so that board and the members who are currently on it requested that a meeting be organized so that they can get that issue back on track. So we went ahead and did that. We went ahead and got the website for Parks and Recreation up, sbcparks.org. We proposed a date. The chairman and I believe, corresponded via email, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get a quorum. So this issue is not exclusive, however, to Parks and Rec. We have a lot of boards and commissions. Some that are legally mandated, like the Planning Commission and LAFCO, some that are not necessarily mandated, but certainly that are desirable, like Parks and Rec, like the Historical Society, like the Veterans Commission, and so forth. It takes a great deal of staff time to work these commissions, because we not only have to post the agendas and attend these and staff them, we also have to create the minutes. And as you know, with the limited staff resources that certainly we have in the CAO's office, I'm not just currently doing the clerk of the board's job, but we're also working on a number of different issues. Fire services contract you just raised, but I've primarily been engaged with the library assessment and the telecenter issue, working with the impact fees. You're going to have discussion pretty soon with the city regarding Class 1. I've been involved in that as well. The CAO has also raised the issue with regard to the gray water ordinance that has been pending for quite some time. So there are a number of different issues that we have to address, and quite frankly, staff time is at a premium and quite limited. So what we want to ask the board, we want to do a couple of things. Number one is we want to ask the board if there is any interest in having staff explore options to bring some more efficiencies to the management of the boards and commissions. One idea that I had proposed strictly as an idea was to create a senior policy advisory council to possibly look at some of the commissions that are not mandated and consolidate them into one council. The other is, or one board, I should say, the other options that are available that I discussed very briefly with some of you on the board is, instead of dedicating each of the board members with one seat to a point per district, making them at-large seats so we could get more participation by more people who would maybe be available to serve on those commissions that wouldn't necessarily be tied to the particular district that the supervisor represents. And working with the dates of the scheduling of those particular meetings, making them perhaps bi-monthly or quarterly, and then trying to make sure that we seek alternates that are appointed in lieu of the members who are serving in those boards and commissions. So I wanted to bring this to your attention, ask you if there was any interest, and if so, what particular options, if any, the board is interested in having staff explore, so we can free ourselves up, but also continue the participation by those who are interested in these public issues.
Okay. Any comments from members of the board at this time? Supervisor Munzer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing I would point out is Vets Park Commission is mandated by a voter initiative.
Right.
So I think for us to roll that in, into anything else would take a vote of the people. Just pointing that out. The other thing is I have no problem with exploring this. Don't want to necessarily do something because that's the way we've always done it. But I think we do have to look to see what is mandated. Fish and Game Commission, is that something that's mandated by the state that we have?
Yes.
And so otherwise, I fully support looking into what our options are. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Barrios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to look at it and see if there are like type of commissions or committees. I know First Five is mandated. You have to have a supervisor. So there are those that we have no choice. But I do not like the idea of not having representation from each district.
Okay.
I think that's critical. When we get elected, you know where to represent,
Sure.
and when we appoint, we should be doing the same thing. So I would like to stay away from that
Okay.
idea.
Very well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mine's real quick. I would agree with Supervisor Barrios. I mean, after all, I kind of created the representation by supervisor district by appointing someone outside my district, and the next following meeting, the board of supervisors punished me by saying, you will now have to hire or bring in within the district. So I will support the board's wishes on that we have to have within the
Okay.
supervisor district.
Okay, very well.
Yeah, I support this this concept. I think it allows staff the time and the flexibility to explore these options is great. The at-large thing, I think some committees, it is important to have a member from your district, such as the Planning Commission.
Absolutely.
But if it's a Park and Rec Commission, I'm open to the opportunity to appoint other people. I've had to appoint I think, 3 different members to the Parks and Rec Commission. It's been very difficult to find someone that's interested
Yes.
in doing it. And so if we have the opportunity to explore this opportunity to do an at-large for certain certain of these committees or commissions, I would certainly explore that.
And one of the reasons also that I wanted to make clear to the board is not just because of staff time, but it also has an impact on our conflict of interest reporting. If you're on a commission and you have to file an FPPC form, then we have to track all that, and we have to work with the clerk auditor recorder's office to do that as well. So it's a question of trying to make it more efficient and a little bit more manageable for us. So we'll explore some of those options. I'll work with council and come up with something that will hopefully streamline it, but also at the same time continue the wishes of the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have anything, Supervisor Patel?
I apologize. I had to step out. I had a real important phone call. But coming back to this, I have had meetings with you, Louis, on this issue and the concern about making quorums, and that's a challenge, and also the staff time.
Yep.
But I do hope we all recognize the importance of these commissions. And I know when I did my appointments with Park and Rec, I got a Park and Rec person.
Sure.
Maybe that person's not quite the land commission person, and that's where, consolidating some of these, it may not be quite the right fit, but a few of these commissions probably would work.
Okay.
But I would like to see a list of how it would be consolidated.
Okay.
And maybe meeting schedules could be altered. You don't maybe need once a month meetings from Park and Rec. Could be every other month or a quarterly basis, but these functions are real important, and the people that are involved in them are dedicated individuals too. So.
And as part of that, we'll also obviously present the opportunity for ad hoc kind of groups within those committees to be able to meet and to work on these issues without the need of having those meetings formally posted, which would save also staff time and resources. So we'll put a presentation together and bring it back to the board, and we'll give you an analysis of what all that is.
Thank you, Louis.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll open up to the public for comments, questions. See none. Bring back to the board. I think that we don't need a formal motion, but staff has you guys have the recommendation from the board. Okay, moving on to item 22. This is out of the County Administrative Office. Mr. Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have Melinda Casillas here. She's our management analyst, and she manages our budget. She'll be presenting to your board a brief overview of our fourth quarter report as well as our first quarter report. I want to thank her and also staff department heads for their adherence to the budget. As you'll see with this, there's been it's a good report. We've received a little bit higher revenues, and we've been managing our budget through the processes, through the healthcare reform, a bunch of other reforms that we've done to reduce our expenditures. It's actually showing within this report. So, Melinda?
Okay. Good morning. So I wanted to give you an update on where we are financially for the fiscal year end 15-16, which ended June 30th, and then where we are the first quarter of fiscal year 16-17, in particular with our salaries and benefits. So I'm going to keep this short. How did we end up with last year? The general fund, this is unaudited. I wanted to stress that this is unaudited, but as of right now, our revenues over expenditures are about $583,000. We had budgeted $1.5 million of fund balance, and it does not appear that we are going to use any of that. There's a couple, I've listed all the funds, if you, and I gave you a printout that you can refer to at your leisure. And then there's a couple of funds, substance abuse, child support. Those appear to be negative right now, but they have fourth quarter claiming, and so we will not see the revenue from that fourth quarter claiming until probably October. And so that will not be part of the financials for 15-16. And then also, the road projects appears to be upside down a little bit right now, but again, there's some Caltrans billings that we have not received any from. The capital projects, they're still in the process of matching the projects with their revenue, so we are anticipating that all the projects that we have budgeted for 15-16, they all had matching revenues, so once they clean that all up, that should be zero net county cost. A couple of points of interest that you might want to look at is how did our economic indicators do? Property taxes, sales taxes, building permits, and a couple of miscellaneous items related to real estate and travel. Overall, we were 110% above budget. Salaries and benefits, and this was the first year that we did vacancy budgeting. Excuse me, overall, we came in at 93% of our budget for overall on salaries and benefits. And those are some items: salaries, temporary, overtime taxes. There's a breakdown of some of those costs. And then on vacancy budgeting, we budgeted $1.2 million that we felt we were going to have in vacancies in the general fund. And again, we did about $1.1 million. So that came in about 93% of what we budgeted. So that's basically how 15-16 the year ended. And then how are we doing looking at the first quarter of fiscal year 16-17? We would anticipate that our expenditures would be about 25%. And overall in the general fund, we're about 21%. So we're right on target. We have some vacancies. We have about 10% of vacancies in our general fund. So we'll be moving some money into vacancy budgeting. These are the additional funds that we budget for. And as you can see, there are a lot of them do have vacancies. The human services at 28 vacancies, that's a combination of all the departments that they oversee. Human Services, Public Health, Public Authority, CSWD. So everybody's right in target as what we would anticipate with salaries and benefits. Actually, most of them are under. And then revenue and expenditures. Revenue is really difficult to predict at this point. A lot of revenue does not come in until the middle to the end of the fiscal year. So I put that information there for you to just see how we were looking. The revenue obviously is quite low, but that is very typical for this time of the year. And then also the expenditures, we would expect to see 25% of our budget to already be used in expenditures. And the only one that's a little bit above is a victim witness. We had a retirement this year, and so we'll be watching that. But we anticipate that all the items that are in red up there that we're keeping an eye on those items, and we do not anticipate any issues with those at this point. Any questions, comments? That's quick. I tried to keep that quick for you so you can get to lunch.
Questions or comments, members of the board?
I want to thank you. It's a great report, and that's a lot of information in a very quick
okay.
quick
So,
time.
and you all have printouts of the presentation. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I can give you further detail if there's any questions that you have. Okay.
I'd like to open it up to members of the public for comments or questions. See none. Bring it back to the board, and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, now we'll turn it to the consent item that was moved to the regular agenda, item 11, County Administrative Office. Mr. Espinoza.
Yeah, this will be presented by Louis, our management analyst.
Okay, members of the board, you have in your packet a request to move funds from integrated or within the integrated waste account to provide the financial assurance instrument that is required by the Department of Toxic Substance Control, DTSC, and that is the final step in the permitting process that the county and the city need to comply with in order to fulfill our obligations regarding the Class 1 site permitting in general. The amount of money is substantially more now because of many factors, primarily because of what DTSC has indicated to us has been the, I don't want to say incorrect, but an alternative method, if you will, of providing the financial assurance. What we currently have in place now is a trust agreement along with the City of Hollister in the amount of $260,000. However, during a conference call that the city and the county had with DTSC, we were informed that the method by which that financial assurance had been provided or that had been allowed was not appropriate. And so the statutory requirement required a higher amount, and the higher amount is equal to $1.428 million, half of which the City of Hollister has to pay and half of which the County of San Benito has to pay. Our share is $714,000, so after discussing the matter with the County Auditor's Office and in speaking with Julie Mullins, who is with the Financial Assurance Division of DTSC, the amount that we have to set aside is the difference between what's in the trust account and what's in your packet, which is, I believe, $582,762,000 or $582,762.10. And for the record, yes, I did add up that number with the balance that we have in the trust account, and that added up to $714,000. That is what's before you today, and we need board authorization in order to be able to move that money into the account, fill out the paperwork for DTSC, send that off, and complete our obligation in that regard.
Okay, any questions from members of the board?
Any questions?
Okay, at this time, I'll open that for members of the public. Questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Brad Sullivan on behalf of the City of Hollister. We're, new to this party late. Late to the party? No, whatever. It's late, unexpected to come here. We've had cost-sharing agreements in 1984, 1990, 1994, 2010, and this issue was never really considered when the parties, the city and the county, met to decide how to move forward. I mean, I don't have institutional knowledge, nor do I think anyone in the room does, about what actually took place in 1980 when the Class 1 landfill that was run by the city for a very short time was covered up. It already had a clay plug, and then it received some tonnage or cubic yards of work or of additional coverage when the Class 3 dump was expanded for the entire county. There were these cost-sharing agreements which were for consultations that as the city had a closure, and we had a closure letter, and it was approved back in the 1980s, and the city has complied with all of the all of the testing, all of the ongoing testing for almost 35 years, I believe since the early 80s, and there never was a problem. A lot of the discussion from the one conference call that I was included on with Louis and a number of consultants was talking about the fundamental unfairness of the DTSC waiting 30-something years to say, hey, wait, we did it wrong back then. Maybe they did. I don't see what the rush is right now. You don't even have before you the reports that the consultants were supposed to are required to generate in our cost-sharing agreements for you to vote for this money. Fortunately for the county, you do have some reserve funds because you have continued to operate a landfill for the past 35 or plus years. Ours was closed. So our reserve funds were used for the closure costs back then and have been supplemented by the county since then in the monitoring costs. But this is general fund money, and if you take the action to fund this right now, you are basically obligating the city to match those funds, which would be out of our general fund, and we have none of the reports of the consultants that the county has used over the years. Engineers, can I continue? I'm sorry. For us to document those costs. My experience has been the same as your county council. You do need to respect DTSC. As a city attorney of a little town that Sutter Creek, and I'll pay the dollar fee to our city, it was built in a gold mining area. So some of the problems you have, or we all have here with the new IDRIA, those are very common in the gold rush area because they did use methods. So we had a situation where we had approved a subdivision on mine tailings piles. Well, in going through the mine tailings files, you found traces of heavy metals. Not unexpected. Gold is a heavy metal. And some of those were arsenic, and some of those were lead. And we allowed it. So we had the same thing. DTSC comes in, threatens a multi-million-dollar fine on us, and we negotiated $75,000, $80,000. I'm not saying that will happen, but that was county council's reaction to when he told me that he has to respect DTSC, that he had that experience in Lompoc where they came in for hundreds of thousands and took something less. We are trying to get a hold of the materials that were apparently given by Mandy Rose to the county and forwarded to Tamara Galanter, an attorney at Chute Mahali, who has been representing the county. We were not provided copies of those documents. We would like the chance to review those. We would also like the chance to review those with the former head of the Science and Research Division within DTSC to see if they can accept our figures or if there are other ways of calculating. There has never been a discharge from the Class 1, and we think it's premature, and to settle it now, keep the money, and that we would like the chance to push this in a different direction and assist Louis in trying, or Louis and the county's consultants with trying to get a resolution that may be on more favorable terms. By acting now, you would have to, at a 4/5 vote, basically, vote to spend money. And, frankly, the agenda item in the staff report, there's no backup for it. None of the reports that we would need to be able to authorize those from our general fund are provided by the county, and your action would also obligate the city to make a similar payment. So I am just asking for a reasonable amount of time. Louis called this morning, or in a conference call we had yesterday when we read the consent agenda and asked to be taken off. Your CAO, your county council, and Louis, we all were talking, and Louis was going to call DTSC. Now, DTSC, they like to, basically say jump, and we all get to say how high or when can we come down, sir. I want to move this fast, but there's a large obligation on the part of the city, and for the last 30 years, we've not had an income stream. We have not been able to, or we have been able to, we could have been charging a franchise fee for all those years for waste pickup within the city to be assembling our own closure, or in this case, post closure costs, because we thought it had been closed. We could have been collecting money from everyone in the city who has been having garbage hauled. We didn't, and yet you have. You did because you knew that you would have to close the Class 3 sometimes. We all thought the Class 1 had been closed. And that's really the issue. your predecessors, Matt and my predecessors, Billy and Ray's, all thought the Class 1 was closed. And yes, we have a joint issue to how are we going to deal with it. But over the last 34 years, or I guess 32 years since 84, you've had the Class 1 and on which every gate fee, every tipping fee, every franchise fee for the waste haulers, a small portion of that has gone aside, and you've been able to put together money for that rainy day that we all knew was coming of having to close it up. We thought we were closed. And we thought that the maintaining the Class 3 over the Class 1 would, and all of our tests were negative, which is the good thing, that we wouldn't be revisiting this issue 30-something years later. So I'm just asking for some time so that we can get involved, that we can either supplement or augment the efforts that Louis and his predecessor had started with DTSC so that we can get it into a number that we can all afford.
Okay, well, thanks for your comments.
And our general fund, we used them for the fire last night, not for these guys.
Mr. Chair?
Hold on
Mr. Chair?
Hold on a second.
I got a question.
Okay.
Is that okay, or you?
Yeah, that's fine. I was going to ask for other comments, but it's fine.
Brett, what do you mean time? How much time are you asking for?
I don't know what it's going to take.
That's the problem.
No, the main concern here, as I believe, is that there's a fear that they're going to come in like the regional board, like any of the state agencies, and start saying, you're out of compliance, you've had plenty of time, $10,000 a day. Yes, I mean, we got that in Sutter Creek. We got a $7.5 million fine, and it was like, great, we got a $3 million general fund budget. Have us, take us, we'll do better. And eventually it was. Eventually, they were lucky enough to find a large company that had to come in and solve the problem. But I'm not saying kick the can down the road months. I am saying if you give us the timeout, we will engage fully. I've already spoken to a former DTSC. He was the head of their research and science department about this issue. And I've hesitated moving forward with him because under these contracts, you're the lead. So you want to get this person involved, or you want to see if it might even help. He has been useful to us over in the Monterey County when people had petroleum extraction and long time ago, and it's been closed, and now it's becoming an issue again because the oil companies were coming back and wanting to re-drill in supposedly depleted fields, and with the new methods they're able to recover, and then these issues of what's down there or what did you put down there or what might be come out again. So we've had this guy who does a modeling. He said with 35 years, he believes he can provide them with the confidence that they might be able to make a decision. What you have, and we've all seen it, Billy, myself, you, is you have a changeover in staff. And just like no one here was around in 1984 making these decisions, no one at DTC was either. And what they're doing is looking at it with, why did someone do it the way they did it? And what I'm hoping this consultant we would like to retain would say is to give reassurance to the new staff that, no, this is good data and you can look at it and here's how it should be looked at, not let's start this 30-year process over again. Because we all have the possibility that this, unlike what was said, this would conclude it. The main thrust of the legal research has been, can the DTSC continue to throw forward a 30-year rolling maintenance or monitoring process, and that the financial assurances are for that to continue. We've seen that too with the way Fish and Wildlife changes how mitigation fields or mitigation lands will be maintained. they change their mind, we're expected to pay the bill for it. And I would like the chance to have a person who may be able to tell DTSC staff that what the city and the county have done have worked, and that we do not need to start the clock running again for another 30 years and put the $1.5 million to pay for that monitoring aside. Because the city has no income stream out of the Class 1 to be funding that. And you may, which is fine, but we obviously don't. So that's why I'm just saying, give us time. We will move on it as fast as we can.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to open up for other comments.
Marty Richmond from Hollister. As I read the item in the agenda, maybe I'm misunderstood. There was a funding arrangement, and now they're saying that funding arrangement isn't what they want. It wasn't like we said, "Oh no, there's no funding arrangement." I remember when this board was told it owed a bunch of money to ERAF. And I can't remember, how long did we negotiate for that? Was that 5 years? 4 years? Sorry. You all remember that. So, and every night I turn the TV on and some guy gets on and says, "Do you owe the IRS $1 million? Come see me and you'll only have to pay $5 and a cup of coffee for your $1 million." I understand it's a little different because the Department of Toxic stuff can get rough. But I think if you stay engaged with them, and that's the key, you don't tell them to go climb a rope, they can be negotiated with. And I think we should try to negotiate with them because it's a lot of money, and we haven't stiffed them. We haven't failed to pay it. We haven't polluted. I'll take Mr. Sullivan at his word that we haven't any leaks, and we've done the monitoring we've promised to do. So, we got a good record, and we should hold that record up because they got enough people with a lousy record that they should go run after. And we should hold our record up and said, look, we've done what we're supposed to. We made an agreement on how we're going to fund that. I understand you're not happy with it. We'd like to talk to you about it at some length. But I do not think we should neglect it. So my recommendation is, if you take Mr. Sullivan's recommendation, obviously he must have coordinated that with Mr. Vera, I think you ought to require a monthly report back to make sure that we don't let it slide. But I do think we ought to stay engaged and ask them to give us a break because we've been a good consumer, and we've been a good person. And just think about how long it took you to get somebody to say, okay, don't worry about your ERAF money. Thank you for your time.
Any other questions or comments from members of the public? Okay, bringing it back to the board, staff.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask staff, what would be the harm to allow more time? One of the things I'm not anxious to do is, spend money or cost the city, any sort of hardship either. But is it unreasonable to maybe continue this item and have a little bit more negotiation?
Yes, it is unreasonable. It is. The Department of Toxic Substance Control told me this morning, we would like for the money to be paid. Otherwise, we're getting ready to send your case to enforcement, to the Enforcement Division. And that's what I want to avoid. I will tell the board this. All of the information that we have received, we've shared with the city via email. We have also made many attempts to contact them telephonically, and those have not been successful up to this point. Now, we did speak with Mr. Sullivan yesterday, but I want to point out to the board that the amount that we are talking about here was made known to the CAO by the city manager after an intergovernmental committee meeting, saying, hey, we don't have the money to pay this amount of money. And as a result of that, the conference call that we had with the DTSC between the city, the county, staff, and legal counsel from the county and DTSC resulted in that agency basically telling us we are required to pay this particular amount of money because the previous financial instrument, as it was allowed by our agency, was not done appropriately. And now that we have more legal staff, and again, the issue with staffing comes up, now that we have more legal staff to put more eyes on more analysis of all of the agreements, we have determined and discovered that this is the amount of money that you need to put up for the financial assurance instrument. It's not a matter of the monitoring, okay? Now, I want to make something very clear to the board. We're putting up this money because we happen to have this money available to us. If the city wanted to put up that money, they could certainly purchase a bond, and that would cost a percentage of the total amount that would be required by DTSC to be put on deposit. They certainly can do that, and I think they probably have the money to do that. The county was going to do the same, but it was determined that it was in our financial best interest to simply take the money and assign it to the restricted account as is requested in the agenda item, so that we would be done with the financial instrument issue once and for all. That's number one. Number two, the city and the county, from the moment that the consent decree was issued by the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States federal government, they knew that any costs associated with that site were going to be paid half by the county, half by the city. And the other issue is that both the 1994, I should say the 1994, the 1990, and the 1984 agreement all specify that the cost sharing between the city and the county would be done equitably, half and half. Now, the money we're talking about here is not for testing. It's a very small amount of money that it costs the city and the county to do the actual testing. I think somewhere in the area of about $30,000 to $40,000 a year. This money is money that DTSC is mandating that we put aside in case there is a discharge of some kind. And it must be held in perpetuity, not 30 years, not 20 years, forever. So when all of us here in this room are ashes to ashes and dust to dust, that money is supposed to be still available to the Department of Toxic Substance Control just in case something happens and a discharge occurs in that area. We're going to continue to do the monitoring. We're going to continue to pay for half of that money, but I don't want to play chicken with the DTSC. This is the final step in getting our financial assurance instrument done from a county perspective, and I think the board should proceed with that item, quite frankly. We've done extensive research on all the agreements. We've discussed at length our legal options with Shute Mahali, our legal counsel, and with county counsel, and we're at the end of the rope. We can't take them to court. We can't request a hearing. We can't do any of these things. We got to pay the money. Simple as that.
Thank you, Lou.
And I hope that answers your question, Supervisor
that
Catella.
answers that question. And, you know, so we put up our end of the money, and it does trigger the city of Hollister needing to do the same amount, I guess.
That is correct. And we're not obligating the city of Hollister to pay that. DTSC is mandating us, both of us, to pay that money. We're not obligating anybody to do anything.
Right. And they could choose to bond.
They can choose to bond. They can choose to set aside $750,000. They can set aside, whatever funding that they may identify as appropriate. And it's in our financial interest to do so because we have the money right now, and we have the availability to put the funds aside, and it's a very conservative and prudent measure to take at this point.
Is it possible to continue the negotiations with DTSC or as far as lowering that uninsured costs or having it adjusted?
Well, the discussion I had with Julie Mullins from DTSC this morning at 7:30, she called me. I left a voicemail for her last night, and she called me back this morning. This is what she said. I don't see any reason to delay this any further, and I don't see any reason for the county to need to delay this any further by, discussing it any further because it's not going to go anywhere. This is it. So unless the board wants to direct staff and legal counsel to file some kind of action in court to do something about it, I just don't see what the other options are. I mean, the board certainly could say, yeah, let's wait and see if we can get a better deal, but the amount of money that's going to cost in consultants and legal fees and administrative costs, let's say it costs $100,000. Well, that's $100,000 that well, that's 1/6 of the financial assurance that's just gone out the door that we spent on trying to defend our position.
This is something that we see all the time, is the state of California and their environmental agencies just completely run amok and don't care where the money comes from or what kind of hardships that it puts on the different agencies, and it's really a bad situation for everyone.
We did, and Mr. Botello, I discussed this at length with both Barbara and with Tamara Galanter, our counsel. Can we request a hearing? Can we request a regulatory review? Can we file something in court? We just don't have any available options at this point. We've discussed it to the point where we're not going to get any, in my view, I don't think we're going to get a better deal than what we got right now, and we're in a very strong position to take advantage of that on behalf of the county. That's where we're at.
Can we say that the check's in the mail?
Can we say the check's in the mail? They're going to ask if
2
it's a
months
cashier.
later?
They're going to ask if it's a cashier's check, and then we just went to Wells Fargo, so I don't know.
Louis, you said that if they did not receive this money in a timely manner, we would be turned over to enforcement.
Yes, and we've staved that off 3 times already.
And what does that mean? Being turned over to enforcement.
That means they're going to start. Fining us X amount of money per day. That's something that Mr. Sullivan was most definitely right on point on. They could fine us $10,000, up to $10,000 per day, because we don't have a permit right now, and we don't have the financial assurance in place, and we're out of compliance, and that's
we don't have a permit for what?
The Class 1 site. This is part of the re-permitting process. I'm sorry.
Oh, even though it's not being utilized, we still have to have
Absolutely.
a permit?
We have to have a permit for that forever. And this has to happen every 10 years. Every 10 years, we have to get a new permit renewed. And every 10 years, we have to show we have the money on hand. We haven't had any discharges. We haven't had, all the reports are made available to them in terms of the monitoring results and all of that. That has really nothing to do with the financial instrument that they're requiring. We continue to do, and we will continue to do the groundwater monitoring and the air monitoring and everything else that's required, and we'll pay half of that in conjunction with the city. The financial instrument is a different question altogether.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
I hope that
Chair.
answers your question.
Any other questions, comments?
Oh, boy.
Okay.
I believe the city manager has.
Let me have 30 seconds, Jerry. I know you want to leave. Here's what I would request, is that Louis is absolutely right. We applied for this permit how long ago, Louis? 5 years ago, 6 years? Yeah, so it's a 10-year permit that we submitted, and it took them 3 years to get back to us. So I don't think time is necessarily all that important to them. I understand that there's some fines that are going on. Here's what I would plead. Give us 30 days. Let us talk to you folks at Intergovernmental. My council has no idea that this is kind of on its way, and it certainly wasn't expecting me to come back to them at their next meeting and say, oh, by the way, we have a $700,000 bill because of a Class 1 landfill that was closed 35 years ago, when there's been $300,000 set aside up until now? 283. I think we have 283 set aside. That's what we've been doing. And I think the disingenuous part about what DTSC is, and I get it, we're all in the same boat together, is that they want in perpetuity, but they say you got to reapply every 10 years. So in 10 years, it may be 1.5 now, but if you got to reapply in 10 years, who's to say it's not 3 million? And who's going to say that it's not 4 million? I think that we should probably take advantage of, again, just 30 days. And if they start going down the enforcement mechanism process, maybe that's another opportunity for us to talk to somebody else. Because I can tell you the people that we're talking to at DTSC, and I hope Barbara and Louis will admit, they're not the easiest folks to deal with. Right? Okay. There's one gentleman at DTSC that is nearly impossible to deal with. So that's all that's what I would be asking. Again, we can add it to the Intergovernmental on Thursday. We can have the same conversation. Louis can present sort of the information as to where we are, and we move forward from there.
All right, so
it's the board, up to the board.
We'll leave it to the board.
What harm is it to wait 30 days?
$10,000 a day?
$10,000 a day. It's, in all seriousness, it is now. Believe, I want to make this very clear. It's not lost on me that the city is in a very difficult position. I have worked from the moment I took on these duties daily, diligently on this item, back and forth with council, with county council, outside council, administrative staff, and Mr. Zamudio, to whom Mr. Avera alluded. He actually has been quite forthcoming. He has given us great assistance in some of the notices of deficiency that the board has been advised of that have been issued, that were very minor in nature, but he's been very forthcoming of late, and he has been the one who has made really clear, hey, you know what, I'm really trying to, they're basically telling me, is what he's telling us, that I got to send this to enforcement if we don't get the financial assurance. That's where we're at.
Do they want the check, sorry, Mr. Chair, do they want the check tomorrow?
They want it ASAP.
Can't you just call them, tell them it's on its way, it'll be there in 30 days?
Well, I could certainly say that, but then, you know, the low-level people are the ones who get in trouble.
I think Supervisor Munzer has an
Yes, sir.
additional question.
So if we voted to spend this money now, send them our portion, and the city chooses to go another route, are we still on the hook for the $10,000 a day fine because the whole amount hasn't been paid?
That's an excellent question, and the answer to that is no, because we made a very forceful case to DTSC that we are neither the owner nor the operator of the Class 1 site. We were at one time, which is why we have to put up half of this financial assurance instrument now, but we are not. And I certainly would not want the city to be put in that position either, but you know, my obligation is to look after the best interests of the county, and this is what it is.
The board should be aware that while I know it struggles the same way your staff has struggled with making payments to the state, especially when the state acts as imperiously as it has here and perhaps not as rationally as it could have, that the enforcement action is real. It's genuine. I would not take that too lightly. I have been involved in it before, and you know, the fines are real, and yeah, you may get to a point someday after a long tortured process with attorneys and lots of fees where you get them to compromise the fine, you know, or resolve the issue through a settlement, but it would be a very long and an expensive process. I would almost more recommend, if you want to take the path that's suggested by Brad about hiring a consultant who has some inside information, if you will, about how DTS operates, I would almost say pay first, pay up front, and then enter into the negotiations, because then you, at least as to the county, have forestalled the enforcement action. If the negotiations are successful, the state can always rebate the money. But you know, the board can say another 2 weeks, another 30 days, whatever. But just realize that the state may file an enforcement action against the county, and it needs to take that seriously. And I think that's why Ray, Joe, Paul, Louie, Barbara, Brett, and myself are not here saying, oh yeah, you know, just ignore the state, you know, just continue it for another 30 days, because we don't really want the county to be subject to that enforcement action. Will the state do it or not? Well, all staff can rely on is what we're being told by them.
Thank you,
We're being
Counsel.
told by them that they're going to do it.
They're going to do it.
Thank you, Council. Yeah, and you know, all due respect to Mr. Sullivan and the city manager, I respect him very much, but at the same time, I'm a county supervisor, and obviously, I'm going to heed the advice of our staff. And you know, I appreciate all the work that's been put into this, and at the same time, we have to look out for our taxpayers and for our public monies. And so, certainly, not approving this today, I think, puts the county at risk, and I'm not willing to do that. So, any other questions or comments?
I just have one comment. It's really too bad that we're down to this deadline. Really too bad. And I think this is a big enough issue that we should be working with the city on this. And I wish we had another 30 days. But I don't know if we could go to our state legislators and put some pressure on them to kind of give some leniency on this. Like I think Mr. Sullivan said, or somebody said that, you know, we haven't had any problems at the John Smith landfill of contamination or non-compliance. And this is extortion. This is just flat out extortion. And, you know, I kind of would love to work another 30 days, but I'm not much into gambling, you know, the enforcement part of it without hearing the conversations myself. I'm going to have to depend on staff and their interpretation. But I think we still need to talk about this at intergovernmental and develop a strategy that is in the interest of, you know, both agencies.
Any other questions,
I
comments?
have a question, Mr. Chair. Was DTS or DTSC, are they the ones that made the mistake in the calculation, not the city and county? Is that a correct statement?
So and I think Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Rivera were at the conference call when they said this. We didn't have enough staff to make sure that the financial assurance instruments were being appropriately assigned. Now that we have more staff, we've discovered that what we provided you, San Benito County and the city of Hollister, was wrong. So now you have to do it this way.
So now it's our problem, even though it was their mistake for
Yes,
having. So I would recommend that we do pay it. We have been forewarned by staff. That's what we hire them for, is to tell us what the risk is for the county. But that we send a letter with reservation and say that. And say we sent this reluctantly with reservation. We don't believe that this is correct, and put it back on them, and request and tell them that we will be investigating it further, and that we expect a refund if we find out that it is not an appropriate.
And Supervisor Barrios, we were exasperated when they said that. We were just like,
I can
what?
imagine. Yeah.
But this is where we're at.
Yeah. So that would be my recommendation, that we do it that way, so that pay it under protest, and make it very clear that we are on the side of the city as well. So
absolutely,
shoot, pay them in pennies.
I agree with Supervisor Barrios that we pay this under protest, but I think we need to pay it. But I think I'd like to direct staff to work with city staff and see if we can renegotiate this amount towards a rebate.
yeah, and that's what's part of my recommendation, is that we protest and that we are going to investigate this further, and that we expect a refund if it was overpaid.
We are happy to do
however
that.
you want to word it, but I think
So
that's
is that
the
a
message.
formal motion?
That is my motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will adjourn into closed session.